The ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was a cacophony of forced laughter and clinking glasses, a sea of black tie-clad bodies under chandeliers that were too bright. I tightened my grip on Liam's arm, my fingers sinking into the fine wool of his tuxedo jacket. It was less about affection and more about navigation. The room was a tight grid of networking clusters, each one a potential career landmine or opportunity for him. 2 days before Christmas, and the air was thick with faux cheer and the underlying stench of ambition. Nextech's annual gala was in full swing. Just stick with me, Evie. Liam had murmured in the Uber on the way over, his hand patting my knee. Hawthorne is here, and his wife. This is a big night. I need to be on. I just smiled, leaning into him. I'm always on your arm, Liam. You know that. And I was. For 2 years, I'd been the impeccably dressed, perfectly composed accessory on the arm of Liam Donovan, Nextech's rising star in marketing. He was the golden boy, the one the board whispered about as a future CMO. And I was Evelyn Reed, the supportive girlfriend with a vaguely academic, comfortably remote job as a linguistic consultant, a detail he always glossed over as something with languages and cultural stuff. Very niche. It allowed him to be the star. I'd never minded. Until tonight, we'd been circling the room for an hour, Liam working the crowd with a politician's ease. I smiled, nodded, shook hands, and made the kind of innocuous small talk that required no brainpower. My mind was elsewhere, already drafting a report for my own biggest client, a report that involved dissecting the very corporate speak these people were spouting. Liam had no idea my niche consultancy advised Fortune 500 companies on cross-border mergers, that I could deconstruct a contract in 6 languages before most people had their morning coffee. It was an omission that had begun to feel less like privacy and more like a lie he preferred. Then we saw him, Richard Hawthorne, Nextech's CEO, a man with a grip like a vice and eyes that missed nothing. He was standing with a small group that included his elegant, silver-haired wife, Eleanor. Richard, Eleanor, Merry Christmas, Liam said, his voice shifting into a higher, more energetic gear. He released my arm to shake Richard's hand, a little too vigorously. Liam, good to see you. And this must be Evelyn. Richard boomed, his gaze flicking over me with polite appraisal. Liam here talks about you all the time. Keeps him grounded. I bet. Lovely to finally meet you both, I said, my smile effortless. Eleanor Hawthorne gave me a warmer, more genuine smile. We fell into the usual chatter, the party, the food, the impressive year Nextech had weathered. Then Richard clapped Liam on the shoulder. So, Liam, I was just telling Eleanor about your last trip to Paris. Seamless work on the Lauron Pharmaceuticals deal. Jean-Claude was extremely impressed. Liam puffed out his chest slightly. Thank you, Richard. It was a complex negotiation, but we got it across the line. And how is Sophie? Eleanor asked, her tone light. Your fiancée must have been thrilled to have you in her city for so long. When do we get to meet her? The air around me didn't just grow cold. It crystallized. Fiancée, my smile didn't slip. It was frozen in place. I felt my body go perfectly still. A skill honed from years in high-stakes meetings where a single twitch could betray you. Liam let out a low, easy laugh. He leaned in toward Richard, his voice dropping into a confidential tone. But he didn't switch to English. He switched to French. Flawless, Parisian accented French. A language he knew I had no obvious reason to understand. Sophie va bien. Merci, he began. Then came the words that would cleave my life in two. Elle est impatiente que je revienne pour les fêtes. Mais ne vous inquiétez pas pour Evelyne. He gave a slight, dismissive nod in my direction. Elle n'est qu'une amie, une connaissance de New York. Très discrète. Vous comprenez? Il faut maintenir certaines apparences ici, surtout avec les investisseurs. Son père serait mécontent s'il savait que je ne suis pas un célibataire sérieux. Sophie as well. Thank you. She's eager for me to return for the holidays. But don't worry about Evelyn. She's just a friend, an acquaintance from New York. Very discreet. You understand one must maintain certain appearances here. especially with the investors. Her father would be displeased if he knew I wasn't a serious bachelor. Each word was a precise, surgical cut. Just a friend, a discreet acquaintance. Maintain appearances. I saw Richard Hawthorne's eyes meet mine for a fraction of a second. Was there a flicker of pity? Or just indifference? He understood. He was in on the joke. My 2-year relationship. The apartment we shared. The future we discussed. It was all a convenient cover story to make Liam Donovan look like a stable, unattached man to his French heiress and her powerful father. A roaring started in my ears, drowning out the orchestra. I felt the weight of the diamond pendant Liam had given me for my birthday, a birthday we'd spent in Vermont, just the two of them, or so I'd thought, resting cold against my skin. I saw the last 2 years with terrifying clarity. The business trips to Paris that always coincided with Sophie's visits home. The way he gently discouraged me from engaging with his French colleagues. The times he'd asked me to just take a quick look at some tricky phrasing in a French contract, using my skills while erasing my presence. I had to get out. Now, I let out a soft, carefully measured gasp and brought a hand to my forehead. "Oh, dear," I murmured in English, my voice a little shaky, perfectly feigned. "I'm so sorry. The champagne has gone straight to my head. Would you all excuse me for a moment? I just need some air." Liam turned, his face instantly a mask of concern. "Evie, are you okay, baby?" The term of endearment felt like a slap. "I'm fine, just a little dizzy. Ladies' room. I'll be right back," I said, forcing a weak smile for the Hawthorns. "Please excuse me. I didn't run. I walked, my spine straight, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the marble floor. I found the restroom. A sanctuary of muted gold and soft lighting. It was empty. I locked myself in the largest stall, leaning my forehead against the cool door. The tears didn't come. Instead, a cold, sharp fury took hold. He thought I was a prop, a discreet, ignorant American friend. He had no idea that the woman he'd just so casually dismissed was fluent, not just in French, but in 5 other languages he couldn't even pronounce. He had no idea that my niche job had trained me to spot a lie from a mile away. He had built his house of cards on a foundation he was too arrogant to even inspect. I pulled my phone from my clutch. My hands were steady. I didn't call my mom. I didn't call a girlfriend. I called the one person who understood strategy, consequences, and the beautiful, brutal language of the law. She picked up on the second ring. "Evelyn, aren't you at Liam's big shindig? Please tell me the canapes are better than last year's." "Chloe," I said, my voice low and utterly calm. "He has a fiancée. In Paris." There was a beat of silence on the other end. Then, my best friend and corporate attorney, Chloe Chin, switched gears instantly. Her voice lost all its levity. "Tell me everything, and don't leave out a single word." So I did. I repeated the French conversation verbatim. My tone flat, analytical. I laid out the facts like evidence on a table. When I finished, Chloe let out a long, low whistle. Okay. So the bastard has been using you as a beard while he lines up a merger with a French banking heiress. Classy. What do I do? Chloe, do I go back out there and pour a glass of wine over his head? God, no, she said. And I could almost hear the gears turning in her brilliant legal mind. That's what he'd expect. Drama. Emotion. You need to be smarter. You need to be you. What does that mean? It means you walk out of there right now. Don't say goodbye to him. Just leave. Get a cab. Go to your place. I still kept my old apartment, a holdover from my freelance days that now seemed like a stroke of genius. Then, you let me make a phone call. A phone call to who? To a guy I know at the SSE, Chloe said, her voice dropping. Liam's been boasting to Richard about the Laurent Pharma deal, right? The one he just closed in Paris? Yes. Well, I've seen the preliminary numbers on that. Evie, the margins are creative, impossibly creative. And remember that consultancy fee he asked you to help him translate the wire instructions for last month? The one to that Shell Corporation in Luxembourg? A cold understanding began to dawn on me. This wasn't just about a broken heart. It was about fraud. You think he's cooking the books? I think our boy Liam is in way over his head, trying to impress his future father-in-law and his CEO at the same time. Chloe said, and he just made the biggest mistake of his life. He pissed off the one person who understands the paper trail better than anyone. So you're going to go home. And I'm going to make a call that will make his very comfortable world very, very uncomfortable. I took a deep breath. The fury was still there, but now it had a purpose. It was a tool. Okay, that's it. No hysterics. No hysterics, I said, unlocking the stall door. I caught my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were hard, my expression grimly determined. The dizzy girlfriend was gone. He thinks I'm just a friend. It's time he learned exactly who his friends are. I hung up, smoothed down my dress, and walked out of the hotel. I didn't look back. I hailed a cab on Fifth Avenue. The cold air a welcome shock. As the cab pulled away from the glittering facade of the Pierre, my phone started to vibrate. Liam's name flashed on the screen. I watched it ring. Then I turned the phone over in my lap, the screen facing down. Let him wonder. Let him panic. The game had just changed, and he was the only one who didn't know the rules. The cab ride from the Pierre to my apartment in the West Village was a blur of streaking taillights and the low murmur of the radio. I didn't cry. I sat perfectly still, my clutch purse feeling like a lead weighed on my lap. The vibration of my phone, Liam's face flashing on the screen, was a persistent, angry buzz against my thigh. I didn't answer. I just watched the city slide by, each familiar block feeling alien and hostile. He had built this entire life for us here, a life I now realized was a meticulously crafted set piece. The fifth time he called, I picked up. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the lie in his voice. Evie, Jesus, where are you? Are you okay? His voice was a frantic mix of concern and irritation. I've been looking all over for you. Eleanor said you looked pale. Did you get sick? I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the cool window. The caring boyfriend act. How long had he been practicing it? I'm fine. Liam, just a headache. I decided to call it a night. A beat of silence. I could almost hear him recalculating. You left? Without saying goodbye. Evie, this is a huge night for me. Richard was surprised. It didn't look good. The irritation was winning out over the concern. I'm sure you smoothed it over, I said, my voice flat. You're very good at that. Another pause. This one was heavier. What's that supposed to mean? Are you mad about something? Was it something I said? A bitter laugh almost escaped me. Was it something I said? No. Liam, it's not what you said. It's just a headache. I need to sleep. I had to get off the phone. I wasn't ready for the confrontation. Chloe was right. Emotion was what he expected. He needed to be off balance. Okay, fine, he said, his tone softening into a placating murmur. You get some rest, baby. I'll wrap up here as soon as I can and come check on you. I'll bring you some soup from that place you like. The sheer audacity of it, the seamless shift from annoyance to doting boyfriend, made my skin crawl. Don't bother. I'm just going to sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. Evie. Wait. I ended the call and powered off the phone. The silence in the cab was deafening. My apartment was a time capsule. I'd held onto it as a workspace, a sanctuary for when Liam's high-energy life became too much. Now, it was a fortress. I locked the door behind me, leaning against it, finally allowing the full force of the betrayal to hit me. It wasn't just the fiancé. It was the 2 years, the conversations, the future we'd planned. It was all a script he was writing, with me playing a supporting role I never auditioned for. I poured a stiff whiskey, the amber liquid doing little to burn away the cold knot in my stomach. Then I powered up my laptop and made a secure video call to Chloe. Her face filled the screen, framed by a messy bun and a large pair of glasses. She was in her home office, a wall of law books behind her. Okay, I'm in. Talk to me. What did he say when you left? I relayed the phone conversation verbatim. My voice still that unsettlingly calm monotone. Chloe nodded, typing notes on a secondary screen. Good. You did good. Vague. Non-committal. And you left him hanging. He's probably sweating into his champagne flute right now, trying to figure out if you're just being a moody girlfriend or if you know something. He thinks I'm a moody girlfriend, I said, taking a sip of the whiskey. That's the entire problem. He's never seen me as anything else. Not really. Then it's time for a proper introduction, Chloe said, a grim smile playing on her lips. Now, let's get tactical. You remember that Loran Pharmaceuticals deal he was so proud of? Of course. He had me look at some of the preliminary correspondence. The French side was getting snippy about payment timelines. Right. Well, after you mentioned that months ago, I got curious. A guy I dated at Columbia works in international compliance at the SEC. I called in a favor, had him take a casual look. The numbers Nextech reported to their shareholders for that deal are ambitious, suspiciously ambitious. The profit margins they're claiming would require Loran to have basically given their product away. I sat up straighter. This was moving fast. You think he's falsifying reports? For what? A bonus? Maybe. Or maybe to impress Richard Hawthorne enough to secure that promotion to CMO. Or, Chloe leaned closer to the camera, her expression intense. Maybe to impress Sophie's daddy. Jean-Claude Loran is old school. He respects bold moves and big numbers. A deal that looks this good on paper makes Liam look like a wunderkind. The pieces were snapping together with a terrifying clarity. My entire relationship had been a business strategy. So he used my language skills to help secure the deal, then inflated the results to secure his position, using me as a cover story to maintain his eligible bachelor status for the Loran family. A full-spectrum con. Bingo, Chloe said. And that consultancy fee he had you help him with? The one for Arcadia Consulting in Luxembourg? I remembered it clearly. He'd been flustered, saying the bank was giving him trouble with the international wire instructions, that it was for a critical market analysis firm. I'd translated the forms for him, noting the Luxembourgish bank details with a professional's detachment. Yes, what about it? Arcadia Consulting is a shell, a ghost. My guy ran it down. It's a funnel. I'd bet my law license that fee was a kickback, or a way to move money off the books to make the Loran deal margins look real. You, my dear, inadvertently helped him launder his own fraud. The whiskey turned to acid in my stomach. I had been an unwitting accomplice. The humiliation was complete. What do? Chloe? We can't just go to the SEC with a hunch. It's my word against his. And I'm the jilted girlfriend. We don't go to them yet, she said, her eyes gleaming with strategic fervor. First, we need evidence. Hard evidence. And you, Evelyn Reed, are in a unique position to get it. How? He's going to come to you tomorrow, full of apologies and excuses. He'll have a story ready about the fiancé comment. He'll try to love bomb you, or gaslight you, or both. You need to let him. I stared at her. You want me to pretend I don't know? To take him back? I want you to pretend to be confused, hurt, but ultimately willing to listen. She corrected. He's arrogant. He thinks he's smarter than you. Use that. Tell him you're upset, that you overheard something about a Sophie, but you didn't understand the French. Play dumb. Tell him you need reassurance. And then, ask him for it. Ask him for what? Access. Chloe said simply, tell him you're feeling insecure, that you want to be more involved in his life, to understand his work. Ask him if you can help him with something. Anything. He's arrogant and he's panicking. He'll see it as a way to placate you and keep you close. He'll give you something to do. And when he does, you get me everything. Emails, files, anything related to the Loran deal or Arcadia Consulting. It was a dangerous game. It meant continuing the charade. Looking into the eyes of the man I now despised and pretending to still be the woman he thought I was. I can't. Chloe, I can't stand to be near him. You can, she said, her voice softening for the first time all night. You're the strongest person I know. You've negotiated peace treaties between warring corporations. You can handle one-line bastard. Think of it as your most important translation project. You're just decoding the real Liam Donovan. She was right. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. And, if I was honest with myself, it was about revenge. Okay, I said, my voice finding its steel again. Okay, I'll do it. Good. Now, I've already taken the liberty of reaching out to my contact. His name is Antoine. He's a private investigator based in Paris, former DGSE. He's discreet, expensive, and very, very good. A pie? What for? We need the other side of the story. Chloe explained. We need to know about Sophie Laurent. Is she a willing participant? Another victim? We need a picture, a timeline, anything we can get. I'm emailing you his secure contact info. You need to brief him. Your French is better than mine. The plan was expanding, becoming more real. I was no longer just a woman who'd been wronged. I was the central node in a covert operation. All right, send it. I'll contact him tonight. We spent the next hour refining the approach, scripting potential conversations with Liam, building the persona of the hurt but forgiving girlfriend I would need to become. When we finally hung up, the sun was starting to lighten the sky over the Manhattan rooftops. I felt exhausted but clear-headed. I opened my laptop and composed an email to Antoine Duval, Chloe's Parisian contact. I wrote in flawless, colloquial French, laying out the situation with clinical precision. My name is Evelyn Reed. I believe my partner, Liam Donovan, is secretly engaged to Sophie Laurent. I need to understand the nature of their relationship. As I typed, my phone, now powered back on, lit up with a series of texts from Liam. Liam, 2:14 a.m. Evie, I'm so worried. Please call me. Liam, 2:37 a.m. I'm outside your apartment. Let me in. We need to talk. Liam, 3:02 a.m. This is crazy. I'm leaving, but we will talk tomorrow. I looked from the screen to my laptop, from the pathetic pleas of a guilty man to the cool, professional email that was my first strike back. A small, cold smile touched my lips. He was Wang Huang, panicked, just as Chloe said he would be. The game was indeed on, and for the first time that night, I felt like I was the one holding all the cards. I finished the email, hit send, and prepared for the performance of my life. The buzzer from the street-level door jerked me awake. I'd finally collapsed into a fitful sleep on my sofa as a gray, miserable dawn broke over the city. The sound was insistent, angry. I didn't need to check the intercom screen. I knew it was Liam. My head throbbed, a dull ache behind my eyes that coffee and aspirin had done little to quell. The script Chloe and I had drafted last night felt flimsy in the cold light of day. Could I really do this? Could I look at him and not scream? The buzzer sounded again, a long, relentless drone. I pressed the talk button, letting my voice sound weak. Sleep slurred. Hello, Evelyn. It's me. Open the door. His voice was tight, a mixture of exhaustion and barely restrained fury. The concerned boyfriend from last night was gone. This was the Liam who didn't like it when his plans were disrupted. I took a deep breath, summoning the persona. The confused, hurt Evie. I buzzed him in. A minute later, a sharp rap on my apartment door. I opened it to find him standing there, still in his tuxedo pants and a rumpled white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar. His bow tie was undone and hung loose around his neck. He looked like he'd been through a war. Good. He didn't wait for an invitation. He brushed past me into the apartment, his eyes scanning the room as if looking for evidence. What? Another man? What the hell was that? Evelyn, he demanded, turning to face me. You just disappear from the biggest night of my career? You embarrass me in front of Richard Hawthorne? What is wrong with you? I wrapped my arms around myself, pulling my robe tighter. I let my lower lip tremble, just slightly. Embarrass you? Liam, I felt sick. I told you. Sick, he repeated, the word dripping with skepticism. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, now disheveled. You seemed fine 1 minute. Then you're bolting for the door after talking to the Hawthorns. What did Eleanor say to you? This was the opening. I looked down at the floor, playing with the belt of my robe. It wasn't Eleanor. I whispered. Then who? Richard. What could he have possibly said? I looked up, letting the confusion and hurt I felt show plainly on my face. It was you, Liam. He froze. The anger on his face flickered, replaced by a swift, calculating caution. Me. What did I say? We were talking about the Paris deal. You were talking in French. I said, my voice gaining a little strength, a little tremor. I caught a name. Sophie. The color drained from his face. It was almost comical. He took a half step back. Sophie? What about her? Eleanor asked about your fiancé. I said, hitting the word with a deliberate, painful emphasis. And you laughed. You were talking about me. Liam. I know you were. I could tell by the way you looked at me. Who is Sophie? What is going on? The lie formed in his eyes before it left his lips. I saw the entire, pathetic structure being built in real time. His shoulders slumped, and he moved toward me, his expression morphing into one of pained understanding. Oh, Evie. God, no. Baby. Is that what this is about? He reached for me, but I took a step back, hugging myself tighter. Don't. Just tell me the truth. Sophie Laurent, he said, sighing heavily, as if carrying a great burden. It's complicated. Her father is Jean-Claude Laurent, my biggest client, my most important client. I know who he is, I said coldly. Right. Well, Jean-Claude is old-fashioned, protective. He doesn't like his key executives being distracted by serious relationships. Liam made air quotes around the words, his face a mask of shared frustration. He thinks it dilutes ambition. There's a rumor he's considering me for a board seat at Laurent Pharma. A huge step up. I stared at him, waiting for the masterpiece to unfold. So, to keep him happy, to keep the peace, I may have let him believe that I'm unattached. And Sophie, she's a family friend. She's been a good sport about it, playing along when her dad is around. This fiancé nonsense is just a story that's gotten out of hand. It's corporate politics, Evie. That's all it is. It's stupid, and I'm sorry you got dragged into it. He looked at me, his eyes wide, pleading. It was a brilliant lie. It was almost believable. It acknowledged a kernel of truth while spinning it into a narrative of career-driven necessity. The Liam I fell for was charming, persuasive. This was that man, weaponized. So you're not engaged to her? I asked, layering my voice with a fragile hope. God, no, he exclaimed, closing the distance between us and taking my hands. I forced myself not to flinch. His hands were cold. How could you even think that? I love you, Evelyn. It's you and me. It's always been you and me. This Sophie thing is just noise. Background noise for a bigger play. For our future. Our future. The words were ash in my mouth. I looked down at our joined hands, feigning hesitation. It hurt. Liam, hearing you talk about me like that, like I was just some friend, it made me feel invisible. It made me feel like I'm not a part of your real life. His grip tightened. You're my real life. This. He gestured around my small, quiet apartment, a stark contrast to his sleek high-rise, is what's real. That party. Those people. It's all a performance. And I need you to trust me. I need you on my team. This was it. The opening Chloe had predicted. I took a shaky breath. How can I be on your team if I don't even know what game you're playing? I feel so shut out. He studied my face, and I could see the arrogance reasserting itself. He thought he had me. He thought my insecurity was a lever he could pull. You're right. You're absolutely right. I've been trying to protect you from the boring corporate crap, but I've just made you feel excluded. I'm sorry. He pulled me into a hug. I rested my head on his chest, my face a cold mask against his shirt. I could smell another woman's perfume on him, something expensive and floral. Sophie, let me in. Liam. I mumbled into his chest. Give me something to do, something to help. I'm good with details, with languages. Put me to work. I need to feel connected to you. He was silent for a moment, stroking my hair. I could practically hear the gears turning. He was considering it. His need to placate me was warring with his instinct for secrecy. You know, he said slowly, there is something. It's a little tedious, but it's important, and it would be a huge help. What is it? I asked, pulling back to look at him, widening my eyes with feigned eagerness. The Loran deal. The paperwork is a nightmare. The final compliance reports are due to Nextech's legal team next week. It's just a lot of data entry, cross-referencing invoices with the bank transfers. But my assistant is swamped. And if it's late, Richard will have my head. You're so meticulous, Evie. You could have it done in an hour. My heart hammered against my ribs. He was giving me the keys to the kingdom. The very evidence Chloe needed. He was so arrogant, so sure of my devotion and my ignorance, that he was handing me the rope to hang him with. I can do that, I said, smiling softly. I'd be happy to. It would make me feel like I'm contributing. Great. It settled then. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that now felt like a brand. I'll have my assistant grant you temporary access to the secure project server when I get to the office. You're a lifesaver, Evie. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're about to find out that I thought. After he left, full of promises to make it up to me with dinner at Carbone. I immediately called Chloe. He took the bait, I said, my voice shaking now that the performance was over. He gave me access to the Loran deal files, the compliance reports. Chloe let out a low whistle. I knew it. The arrogance is breathtaking. Okay, the second you get that login, you download everything. Every single file in that folder. Don't be subtle. Just take it all. I'll get it to my SEC guy. There's more, I said, moving to the window and watching Liam's Uber pull away. The lie he told, it was elaborate. He said Sophie is just a family friend he uses to maintain a single image for her father. He's good. Chloe, really good. They always are. She replied, her voice grim, which is why we need to move fast. Did you get hold of Antoine? I sent him a detailed email last night. He just replied, he's on it. He's going to start digging into Sophie Loran today. Good. Let's pull the thread, Evie. Let's see what unravels. I ended the call and opened my laptop. There, in my inbox, was an email from Liam's assistant, Megan, with the subject line, Temporary Server Access, Loran Pharma Compliance. Attached was a login and a password. I clicked the link, a secure portal for Nextech. I entered the credentials. The screen loaded, presenting a directory of files. Loran_final, financial_ports, bank_transfers, invoices. I highlighted every single folder. I right-clicked, and I selected Download. As the progress bar began its slow crawl, I opened a new browser tab and typed a message to Antoine Duval in Paris. Antoine, it's Evelyn Reed. The situation is confirmed. He has just given me a cover story. Please proceed with urgency. I need to know everything about Sophie Loran and her relationship with Liam Donovan. I hit send. The web of lies was spreading from New York to Paris, and I was no longer the fly caught in it. I was the spider. The digital clock on my laptop read 11:17 a.m. A zip file containing the entire Loran_deal directory was now securely stored on an encrypted drive. A copy already winging its way to Chloe's secure server. The scale of what I held was staggering, hundreds of files, a labyrinth of financial records. But the key, as Chloe had predicted, was in the comparisons. It hadn't taken long to find the first glaring discrepancy. My phone buzzed. Liam. I took a steadying breath, adopting the persona of the helpful, slightly overwhelmed girlfriend. Hey, I answered, making sure my voice sounded a little breathless. This is a lot more than just data entry. Liam, there are so many spreadsheets. I heard his charming, distracted laugh on the other end. I know. Sorry, baby. It's the full Monty. Just focus on the compliance reports for now. It's basically just matching the invoice numbers from Loran with our bank transfer confirmations. Make sure the amounts line up. Should be straightforward. Straightforward, the word was a joke. I had an invoice from Loran Pharmaceuticals for 15 million euros, and I had a bank transfer confirmation from Nextech for 20 million euros, a 5 million euro difference. And that was just one transaction. It's just some of the numbers don't seem to match up perfectly, I said, layering my voice with innocent confusion. Like, the invoice for the first shipment, it says 15 million, but the bank file says 20. Is that right? The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could almost feel the cold sweat breaking out on his skin. When he spoke again, his voice was a notch higher. Oh, right. Yeah, that's the licensing fee. It's a separate agreement. The files must be cross-referenced. Don't worry about that. The compliance report only cares about the invoice amount. Just use the 15 million figure. There's no separate file for a licensing fee. I pressed gently, like a diligent worker be pointing out a clerical error. Should I be looking for it? I want to make sure I do this right. No, he said, too quickly. He cleared his throat. No, it's handled. It's on my personal drive. I'll merge the data myself later. You're right to flag it, though. Good eye. Just stick to the one-to-one matches. Okay, that's all legal needs. Okay, if you're sure, I said, sweetly compliant. I just don't want to mess anything up. You're not. You're helping immensely, he said, his relief palpable. Listen, I've got to run into a meeting with Richard. Thank you, Evie. Really, I'll make it up to you tonight. Carbone at 8. I love you. I love you too, I whispered, the lie tasting like poison. I hung up and immediately dialed Chloe. He's panicking, I said without preamble. There's a 5 million euro discrepancy. He tried to brush it off as a licensing fee with no paperwork. He told me to ignore it. Bingo, Chloe said, and I could hear the clicking of her keyboard in the background. That's the fraud, right there. He's overstating the cost of the deal to Nextech. And I bet my entire 401k that the extra 5 million is the kickback he sent to that shell in Luxembourg. He's siphoning money from his own company to make the deal look bigger than it is. The arrogance. I breathed. He gave me the evidence to convict him. He thinks you're a secretary with a crush, not a forensic accountant with a motive. Chloe replied dryly. Okay, my guy at the SEC is salivating, but he needs more than just the files. He needs a narrative. He needs a witness. Which brings me to my next point. We need to talk about Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Veritas Tech, Nextech's most aggressive competitor. He was a looming presence in the tech world, known for his sharp intelligence and ruthless tactics. I'd met him once, a year ago, at a charity auction. He'd been intense. He'd asked me a question about semantic AI in Japanese, and we'd had a brief, fascinating conversation that Liam had quickly ended. Looking annoyed. What about him? I asked, a knot of apprehension forming in my stomach. Veritas has been trying to poach Loran Pharmaceuticals for months. Liam stole the deal out from under them. Marcus would have a vested interest in seeing Liam's deal exposed as fraudulent. More than that, he'd be appreciative. He might even have additional leverage or information. Chloe, no, I'm not going to work with a shark like Thorne. This is about exposing Liam, not starting a corporate war. It's too late for that. Evie, Chloe's voice was firm. This is a corporate war, and you're standing in the middle of the battlefield. Marcus isn't just a shark. He's the one who controls the ocean. We need allies. And he reached out to me. I froze. He what? When? About an hour ago. A discreet call to my office line. He said he'd heard rumors of instability around Nextech's golden boy. He said he'd be amenable to a conversation. With you. The world was tilting again. This was moving too fast, pulling me into deeper, darker waters. How does he even know about me? Because he's Marcus Thorne, Chloe said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He makes it his business to know everything about his competitors, and that includes their talented, multilingual girlfriends who are suddenly asking pointed questions about compliance reports. A chill ran down my spine. I was a pawn in a game I hadn't even known I was playing. I don't like it. You don't have to like it. You have to be smart. Meet him. Hear what he has to say. You don't have to commit to anything. But if he has information, we need it. Later that afternoon, as I was sifting through more files, my personal cell phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. A New York area code. I answered cautiously. Evelyn Reed. Ms. Reed. Marcus Thorne. The voice was deep, calm, and carried an undeniable authority. I understand you've had a rather enlightening 24 hours. I was speechless for a second. Mr. Thorne, this is unexpected. I prefer directness. He said, I believe we have a mutual problem, one that presents a mutual opportunity. I'm having a drink at the Mark Hotel, the bar. Join me. It wasn't a question. It was a summons. 20 minutes later, I was walking into the opulent, quiet bar of the Mark. He was seated in a secluded booth, a tumbler of whiskey in front of him. He stood as I approached. Marcus Thorne was taller than I remembered, with sharp, intelligent features and eyes that missed nothing. Evelyn, thank you for coming. He gestured for me to sit. A summons from Marcus Thorne is hard to ignore, I said, sliding into the booth opposite him. A faint smile touched his lips. I appreciate that. Let's dispense with the pleasantries. Liam Donovan is defrauding his shareholders and using a relationship with you as a smokescreen for his engagement to Sophie Laurent. You've discovered this, and you're rightfully seeking resolution. I kept my face impassive, though my heart was racing. He knew everything. You're very well informed. It's my job. My interest is simple. The Laurent Pharmaceuticals deal is tainted. If it collapses, Veritas has a chance to step in, but a simple collapse isn't enough. The stench of fraud needs to be so overwhelming that Jean-Claude Laurent has no choice but to look for a new, reputable partner. That's where you come in. And what do I get out of this? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. Justice. For starters, he said, his gaze unwavering, but also a future. When this is over, Nextech will be toxic. Your consulting business, by association, will suffer. I'm offering you a position at Veritas, head of global communications strategy, a real title, a real salary, a chance to use that remarkable mind of yours for something other than cleaning up a con man's mess. It was a staggering offer, and it was also a leash. You want to own the whistleblower, I stated. I want to align my interests with a valuable asset. He corrected smoothly. Help me expose Liam Donovan for the fraud he is, and I'll help you build a fortress around the life you deserve. Think about it. He slid a plain white business card across the table. It had only a phone number on it. That's my private line. When you're ready to move from victim to victor, call me. I left the Mark Hotel feeling more unsettled than when I had arrived. I was no longer just pulling a thread on Liam's lie. I was being invited to light the whole tapestry on fire, and a man like Marcus Thorne would be holding the match. The dinner at Carbone was a masterclass in psychological warfare. I had to sit across from Liam, eating $20 truffle gnocchi, while he spun elaborate lies about his stressful day and how my help had been a lifesaver. I smiled. I nodded. I even reached across the table and held his hand, my skin crawling at the touch. You have no idea what it's like, Evie, he said, swirling his Burlo. The pressure from Richard is immense. This Laurent deal, it has to be perfect. Any little mistake, and it all comes crashing down. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I'm sure you've covered all your bases, I said, my voice sweet. You're always so thorough. His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, and a flicker of something, panic, annoyance, crossed his face before he quickly dismissed the notification. Just work, he muttered, but I had seen the name on the screen. Sophie L. The performance was exhausting. By the time he walked me to my apartment door, leaning in for a goodnight kiss, I thought I might be sick. I turned my head at the last second, so his lips brushed my cheek. I'm just really tired. Liam, it's been a long day. He looked momentarily offended, then smoothed his expression into one of concern. Of course, Get some rest. I'll call you tomorrow. He hesitated. And Evie, you deleted those files from your computer, right? Company policy. Of course. I lied smoothly. All gone. The moment the door closed, I leaned against it, taking deep, ragged breaths. My phone vibrated in my clutch. It was Antoine, the investigator in Paris. I accepted the video call, my hands trembling. Ms. Reed, he said, his face grim on the screen. He was in a dark, book-lined room, a cigarette smoldering in an ashtray beside him. I have made progress. It is not simple. Tell me, I said, my voice hoarse. Sophie Laurent. She is 28, an art historian. She divides her time between her family's apartment in the 16th arrondissement and a chateau in Provence. By all accounts, she is gentle, sheltered, and her relationship with Liam? I prompted, my heart in my throat. Antoine took a drag from his cigarette. It is public. They have been seen together for over a year. Society pages call them an item. But there is more. He leaned closer to the camera. I have a contact, a maid at the Hotel de Crillon. She says Mademoiselle Laurent has been staying there frequently this past month. She is unhappy. She cries. She argues on the phone. In English, with a man. My blood ran cold. Did your contact hear what was said? Fragments. You promised. My father will be furious. She is just a friend. Antoine paused, letting the words hang in the air. They were a perfect mirror of my own pain. But this is the most important thing. Ms. Reed, 2 days ago, Mademoiselle Laurent received a package, a gift, from New York. The maid saw the return label. It was from Nextech. The world seemed to tilt. What was in it? A dress. Very expensive. But with it, there was a note. Antoine held up a blurry photograph, clearly taken on a mobile phone. It was a handwritten note on Nextech stationery. For our engagement party. I can't wait to see you in it. Destroy this note. Elle. I stared at the image, my mind reeling. It was proof, not just of the affair, but of the lie. He had sent that note after gala, after he had looked me in the eye and called Sophie a family friend. Ms. Reed? Antoine's voice was gentle. Are you all right? No, I whispered, but I will be. Antoine, I need to speak to her. To Sophie. That is risky. I don't care. She's a victim in this too. Can you get me her number? Her private number? He sighed. I can try. But, Ms. Reed, be careful. You are playing with fire. An hour later, a number with a French country code appeared in my messages. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was late in Paris, but I didn't care. I dialed. The phone rang 3 times before a soft, hesitant voice answered. Allô? Sophie Laurent? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Oui? Qui est à l'appareil? She sounded wary. My name is Evelyn Reed. I'm calling from New York. I believe we have something, or rather, someone, in common. Liam Donovan. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Then, a long silence. When she spoke again, her English was flawless, though laced with a subtle French accent. How did you get this number? That's not important. What's important is that Liam told me 2 days ago that you are a family friend he uses to maintain a single image for your father. He told me you are not his fiancée. She let out a bitter, choked sound that was half laugh, half sob. He told me the same thing about you. He said you were a clingy colleague from New York, a temporary distraction he was trying to disentangle himself from. He said you did not understand boundaries. The sheer, breathtaking duplicity of it left me speechless for a moment. He had built 2 separate, perfect prisons for us. Sophie, I said, my voice softening with a shared pain I now knew was real. He gave me a diamond pendant for my birthday. We have spent the last 2 Christmases together. We lived together. The dam broke on her end. I heard her crying, soft, hopeless sobs. He gave me a ring, a sapphire, last month, in Provence. He said we would announce it after the new year, after the deal with my father was secure. He said it was bad for business to seem distracted. We need to meet. Sophie, I said firmly, face to face. How soon can you get to New York? I cannot. My father. Tell your father you're coming to New York to see the holiday windows. To shop. Tell him anything. But you need to come here. I have evidence. Sophie, I have proof that Liam is not just a liar. He's a criminal. He's cheating your father's company. 2. There was another long silence. I could hear her breathing, shaky but steadying. When she spoke again, there was a new steel in her voice, the steel of a woman who had been pushed too far. I have evidence too, she said quietly. Emails. He was careless on my laptop. He thought I would not understand the financial terms. There are transfers, large sums of money going to a company I have never heard of. Arcadia. A jolt of electricity shot through me. She had it, the final piece. Bring everything. I said, come to New York. I'll explain everything when you get here. I gave her the address of my apartment. We hung up. I stood in the center of my quiet living room, the city lights twinkling outside. The hurt was still there, a raw, open wound, but it was being cauterized by a cold, burning fury. Liam had underestimated both of us. He had thought we were just pretty accessories, easy to manipulate and control. But he had made one critical mistake. He had turned us from rivals into allies. And together, Sophie Laurent and I were going to destroy him. Sophie Laurent arrived in New York 2 days later, a ghostly figure swathed in a cream-colored coat, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. The initial meeting in my apartment was painfully awkward. We were two strangers bound by a shared, profound humiliation. She stood by the window, not touching anything, as if afraid to leave a trace. He said you were unstable. She began, her voice barely a whisper, that you had convinced yourself there was more to your professional relationship. And he told me you were a beard for his career. I replied, the crude American slang sounding harsh in the quiet room. He reduced us both to functions. A problem. A prop. She finally turned to look at me, her gaze sharpening. You said you have evidence. Of crimes. I gestured to my laptop. I do. But first, you said you had emails. She opened her expensive leather purse and pulled out a slim tablet. Her hands trembled slightly as she navigated to a file. He used my laptop once. When his had no power, he forgot to log out of his private email. I was curious. She handed it to me. I do not understand all of it. It is about money. A lot of money. The emails were a bombshell. They were between Liam and a cryptic address. Arcadia.consulting at securemail.ch. The language was veiled, but clear enough if you knew what to look for. Liam. The initial transfer of 5 million euros has been received. The Laurent deal is being presented to the board with the adjusted margins, awaiting further instructions on the second tranche. The Luxembourg channel remains secure. Arcadia. Acknowledged. The second tranche of 3 million euros is to be held until after the official announcement. Your bonus is contingent on the stock price increase. Ensure the American girlfriend remains placated. Any disruption from that quarter would be problematic. I looked up at Sophie, my blood running cold. He wasn't just lying to us. Sophie, he's embezzling millions. He inflated the cost of the deal with your father's company to steal from his own shareholders. And he was paying someone. A partner. Her face was pale. A partner? In this? Arcadia Consulting. I said, pulling up the files I'd stolen from Nextech. It's a shell company. He was using it to funnel the money. But this email, awaiting further instructions. It sounds like he's not the one in charge. It sounds like he's taking orders. The scope of the conspiracy widened terrifyingly. This wasn't just Liam being greedy. This was something more organized. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus Thorne. I showed the screen to Sophie. I have to take this. She nodded, looking frightened but resolute. I put the call on speaker. Marcus. Evelyn. I hear you've been busy. A certain Mademoiselle Laurent has just cleared customs at JFK. His voice was calm, but the fact that he knew was a stark reminder of his reach. How could you possibly know that? I demanded. I make it my business to know when key players enter my city. He said smoothly, "This is a positive development. She has information." I assume she does. I confirmed, glancing at Sophie. Emails that tie Liam directly to the fraud. And it looks like he's not working alone. There's someone else. Arcadia Consulting. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Marcus spoke again, his tone was deadly serious. "Arcadia, are you sure?" "Yes." "Why? Do you know who that is?" "I've heard the name. In whispers. It's not a company. Evelyn. It's an alias. For a very dangerous man. An investor who specializes in corporate sabotage and hostile takeovers. If Liam is mixed up with him, this is far bigger than a simple fraud case." "Sophie!" And I exchanged a look of alarm. "Dangerous man. What should we do?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. "You need to go public. Now. Before this Arcadia individual knows you're onto him. You have the evidence. You have a witness from the Laurent family. You need to take it to the SEC, and you need to do it with a lawyer and a publicist. You need to control the narrative before they do. My lawyer is already on it," I said, thinking of Chloe. "Good, but you need more firepower. My offer stands. Evelyn, Veritas's legal and PR teams are at your disposal. We can have a press release drafted in an hour. We can have you and Mademoiselle Laurent in a secure location by tonight." It was an overwhelming offer, a lifeline, but it was also a trap. Aligning with Marcus Thorne would forever tie my story to his corporate warfare. "I need to discuss it with Sophie," I said carefully. "Don't discuss for too long." He warned, "The longer you wait, the more time Liam and his associate have to cover their tracks. Or worse, call me when you've decided." He hung up. The silence in the room was heavy. Sophie looked at me, her eyes wide. "A dangerous man? What does that mean?" "It means we might be in over our heads," I admitted. I called Chloe and put her on speaker, quickly explaining everything: Sophie's emails, Marcus's warning about Arcadia. Chloe let out a low whistle. "Okay, this just went from a white-collar crime to a potential thriller. Marcus is right about one thing. We need to move fast, but we don't need him. We have the evidence. My guy at the SEC is ready. We can file the report today, but Marcus can offer protection." Sophie interjected, her voice trembling. "If this man is dangerous, my father, I cannot involve my family in something like this." It was the crucial point. Chloe argued for the purity of the legal process. Marcus offered the shield of his power and resources. I looked at Sophie, saw the fear in her eyes, and knew that this was no longer just about my revenge. I had dragged her into this. "Okay," I said, my decision made. "Chloe, file the report with the SEC. Now, use everything we have. But call Marcus back. Tell him we accept his offer of secure accommodation for Sophie and me, just as a precaution. But we are not using his PR team. We do this by the book." It was a compromise, using Marcus's practical help without selling him the story. An hour later, a black SUV with tinted windows was outside my apartment building. Sophie and I got in, a single bag each in our hands. As the car pulled away, my phone rang again. "Liam." I showed the screen to Sophie. Her face hardened. "Answer it," she said, her French accent sharp with anger. "Put it on speaker." I did. "Evie, where the hell are you?" Liam's voice was frantic, panicked. "The SEC just showed up at the office. They're seizing servers. They're asking about the Laurent deal. About me. What did you do?" I took a deep breath, my voice cold and clear. "I did what you should have done, Liam. I told the truth." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then, his tone shifted, turning venomous. "You stupid bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined everything. This isn't just about me. There are other people involved. Powerful people. You're going to regret this." Before I could respond, another voice cut in on the line, low and chillingly calm. A voice I didn't recognize. "Mr. Donovan." "That is quite enough." Liam immediately fell silent. I could almost feel his fear through the phone. The new voice spoke again. directly to me. It was smooth, educated, and utterly menacing. Ms. Reed, a pleasure, in a manner of speaking. I am the principal of Arcadia Consulting. It seems you have been very busy. I would advise you to reconsider your current course of action, for your sake, and for the sake of your new friend. The line went dead. Sophie and I stared at each other in the silent, moving car. The threat hung in the air, cold and real. The silent war was over. The real one had just begun. The safe house was a sleek, anonymous high-rise apartment in Tribeca, all concrete floors and floor-to-ceiling windows with a stunning, impersonal view of the Hudson River. It felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. The voice on the phone, the man from Arcadia, had shattered any illusion that this was just a financial scandal. Sophie was pacing, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. He knew my voice was on the line. He called me your new friend. How did he know? He's monitoring Liam's phone. I said, my own heart still thumping against my ribs, which means he's known about our movements, our conversations, for who knows how long. I looked at Chloe, who was typing furiously on her laptop at the minimalist kitchen island. Your SEC guy, did he know about this Arcadia person? About the threat? Chloe didn't look up. He knew the name, said it was a red flag, but dangerous. That's a new level. I'm digging, but this guy is a ghost. The Swiss email address is a dead end. It's encrypted, bulletproof. She finally stopped typing and looked at me, her face grim. The report is filed. The SEC has moved faster than I've ever seen. They've frozen Nextech's assets related to the Laurent deal and are bringing Liam in for questioning tomorrow. It's public now. My personal phone, which I had kept on a separate, secure line Chloe had provided, started to buzz. It was Richard Hawthorne. I showed the screen to Chloe. Answer it, she said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what the CEO has to say when his golden boy implodes. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. Richard, Evelyn. His voice was like gravel, stripped of all its previous bonhomie. What in God's name have you done? I exposed a fraud. Richard, one that was happening under your nose. Don't you dare take a moral high ground with me. He snarled. You have no idea the damage you've caused. This isn't about one deal. You've jeopardized the entire company. Thousands of jobs. Then you should be thanking me for rooting out the cancer before it spread. I shot back, my voice cold. There was a tense silence. When he spoke again, his tone was lower, more controlled, and far more threatening. Listen to me very carefully. Girl, you will retract your statement. You will tell the SEC you were confused, that you misinterpreted files you had no business seeing. You will say it was a lover's quarrel gone too far. Or what? Richard, I challenged, though a chill went down my spine. Or you will find that the business world is very, very small. Your consulting career will be over. I will bury you. And as for your little French friend, I'm sure her father would be very interested to know about her role in this hysterical spectacle. Sophie gasped softly. He was threatening her. Too. I'm not retracting anything, I said, my voice shaking with fury. The truth is out. You should be focusing on damage control, not threatening the whistleblower. You've been warned. He hissed, and the line went dead. I slumped into a chair. The walls were closing in. Liam's venom, the Arcadia man's calm threat, and now Richard Hawthorne's corporate intimidation. We were under attack from all sides. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus Thorne. I see the hounds have been unleashed, he said without preamble. Hawthorne called you. I assume? How do you know that? Because he just got off the phone with me. Marcus replied, offering a truce, a merger, even. He's desperate. He knows Nextech is finished if Liam goes down. He's trying to contain the blast. What did you say? I told him I'd think about it, Marcus said, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. But my offer to you is more concrete. My head of security is outside your building. His name is David Chin. He's ex-Special Forces. He's going to be your shadow until this is over. Do not argue. Accept it. I looked at Chloe, who gave a sharp, reluctant nod. We were in over our heads. Okay, I said. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Marcus said. This Arcadia situation changes things. I've heard from my sources. The man on the phone is likely someone named Silas Vance. He's a fixer for very rich, very powerful people who don't like scandals. If Vance is involved, this is about more than money. It's about silencing the noise. Permanently. The word permanently hung in the air. Sophie sank onto the sofa, her face ashen. What do we do? I whispered. You do nothing. You let David do his job, and you let me handle Vance. His voice was absolute. This is my world. Evelyn, you pulled the thread. Now, let me clean up the mess. He hung up. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is David Chin. I'm in the lobby. All secure. You need anything. You call me. The sense of being a pawn returned. Stronger than ever. I was now a protected asset in a war between Marcus Thorne and a shadowy fixer named Silas Vance. My revenge against Liam had become a minor subplot. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered into the living area to find Sophie sitting in the dark, staring at the city lights. I am sorry, she said softly. I brought this to you. This danger. You didn't bring it, I said, sitting beside her. Liam did. We're both victims in this. I spoke to my father, she said, her voice small. I told him everything. About Liam. About the fraud. He was quiet. Then he said he was sending his security team from Paris. They will be here tomorrow. The Laurent family was mobilizing. The stakes were now international. I am not a fighter. Evelyn. Sophie continued, turning to look at me, her eyes glistening in the dim light. I am an art historian. I like quiet rooms and old paintings. But now, I am so angry. I want him to pay. Me too. Sophie, I said, taking her hand. It was cold. Me too. Just then, my phone lit up with a notification. It was a news alert. Breaking. Nextech executive Liam Donovan taken in for questioning by SSC. Sources indicate a major financial scandal involving the Laurent Pharma deal. Whistleblower reportedly a former associate. Former associate. They were already trying to write me out of the story, but as I read the headline, I felt no satisfaction, only a cold dread. Liam was in custody, but the real players, Hawthorne, Vance, were still out there, and they knew exactly where to find us. The game had become a battle for survival, and the first shot had been fired, not in a boardroom, but in a whispered threat on a phone line. The dangerous turn had been taken, and there was no going back. The federal courthouse was a fortress of stone and swirling media. Sophie and I arrived in a convoy, David Chen's team from Veritas in one SUV, the stern, silent professionals from the Laurent family in another. We were hustled through a side entrance, a blur of flashing cameras and shouted questions. Evelyn, over here. Sophie, did you know about the fraud? Inside, the air was cold and smelled of old wood and anxiety. We were led to a small, windowless room to wait. Chloe was already there, her face a mask of professional calm, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. This is it, she said, handing me a glass of water. Just remember what we rehearsed. Tell the truth. Answer only the question asked. Don't volunteer anything. The evidence speaks for itself. Sophie sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. She looked like she was going to her own execution. My father's lawyers said the same thing. She murmured, They are not happy with me, but they are here. The door opened, and a stern-faced U.S. Marshal beckoned us. They're ready for you. Ms. Reed, Mademoiselle Laurent. The hearing room was smaller than I'd imagined, but no less intimidating. Liam was already there, seated at a table with his lawyer. He looked like a ghost of himself. His suit was rumpled, his face pale and gaunt. When his eyes met mine, they were filled with a pure, undiluted hatred that made my breath catch. There was no charm left, no pretense. This was the real Liam, stripped bare. At the next table sat Richard Hawthorne, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might snap. He didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, as if he could wish the entire proceeding out of existence. We were sworn in. The SEC attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Williams, began her questioning. She led me through the discovery of the files, the financial discrepancies. I spoke clearly, my voice steady, laying out the facts. I was a linguist. After all, precision was my trade. Then it was the turn of the attorney for Nextech's board, a slick man with an expensive watch. He tried to attack my credibility. Ms. Reed, isn't it true that you were in a romantic relationship with Mr. Donovan that had recently soured? Yes, I said. And isn't it true that you have a professional relationship with Marcus Thorne of Veritas Tech, a direct competitor of Nextech? I have recently accepted a consultancy with Mr. Thorne. Yes, he smirked, as if he'd scored a point. So, this isn't really about whistleblowing, is it? This is about a jealous ex-lover, working with a corporate raider, to destroy a man's career out of spite. Before I could answer, Chloe was on her feet. Objection! Counsel is testifying and badgering the witness. Sustained, the judge said, giving the lawyer a warning look. But the damage was done. I could see the doubt on the faces of some of the officials in the room. They wanted a simple story, a corporate hero or a scorned woman. The truth was too messy. Then, it was Sophie's turn. She was trembling as she was sworn in. The Nextech lawyer went in for the kill. Mademoiselle Laurent, you were also romantically involved with Mr. Donovan, were you not? Yes, she whispered. And you were, in fact, engaged to be married to him? Sophie looked at Liam, then at me. I gave her a small, encouraging nod. She straightened her spine, and when she spoke again, her voice was clear and carried the weight of centuries of Laurent family authority. I was led to believe that was the case. I now know I was one of at least 2 women he was deceiving. The lawyer pressed on. And isn't it also true that your father's company stands to benefit immensely if the Laurent deal is voided and they can partner with Veritas Tech instead? A much more lucrative partnership, I'm told. Sophie's eyes flashed. My father's company stands for integrity. We do not benefit from fraud. We are victims of it. She turned her gaze to the judge. And I have evidence that Mr. Donovan was not working alone. She produced the tablet with the Arcadia emails. As she read them aloud, Liam's fawning messages, the instructions for the money transfers, the room fell silent. She was no longer a timid art historian. She was a force. Then came the moment I will never forget. The Nextech lawyer, desperate, asked Liam a direct question. Mr. Donovan, did you or did you not have a secret arrangement with an entity known as Arcadia Consulting? Liam's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, advising him to plead the fifth. But Liam snapped. The pressure, the exposure, the sight of Sophie and me united against him, it was too much. He slammed his hand on the table and stood up, his face contorted with rage. He pointed a shaking finger at me, but his words were for Sophie, a torrent of vicious, fluent French. Espèce de garce naïve, tu es ruiné ma vie. Elle n'est qu'une putain américaine stupide. Mais toi, tu avais tout, et tu as tout gâché pour cette idiote. The room erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Donovan, you will speak English in this courtroom. But I was already on my feet. The insult hung in the air. Stupid American whore. I looked from Liam's snarling face to Sophie's shocked one, and then to the judge. Your Honor, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. I replied in the same language, my Parisian accent flawless and icy. Je pense que l'accusé vient d'oublier que je comprends chaque mot vomi par sa bouche méprisable. Il a trahi sa société. Il a trahi Mademoiselle Laurent. Et il m'a trahi. Les preuves sont là. La comédie est terminée. A stunned silence fell. The entire room stared at me. I had not just understood his outburst. I had verbally disarmed him in his chosen language of attack. The Nextech lawyer sank into his chair. Defeated, Richard Hawthorne put his head in his hands. The judge looked from me to Liam, his expression one of utter contempt. The court is adjourned for a short recess. Mr. Donovan, consult with your counsel. I suggest you prepare to change your plea. As the officials filed out, Liam was led away by marshals. His shoulders slumped. A broken man. The unmasking was complete. He hadn't just been exposed as a fraud. He had been exposed as a pathetic, vicious bully. Sophie came to my side, her eyes wide. You said you would tell him the comedy was over. I took a deep breath, the adrenaline starting to fade, leaving me shaking. It is, I said, but as I looked toward the door, I saw Marcus Thorne standing there. Having watched the entire proceeding, he gave me a slow, deliberate nod of approval. It wasn't over. The courtroom battle was won, but the war with the shadows was just beginning. The real player had been watching, and he was smiling. The silence in the safe house was deafening. The adrenaline that had fueled me through the hearing had evaporated, leaving a hollow, aching exhaustion. We had won. Liam was in federal custody, denied bail. The news channels were running nonstop coverage of the Nextech scandal, painting Sophie and me as unlikely heroes. But the victory felt like ash in my mouth. Sophie was on the balcony, talking in low, rapid French on her phone. Her father, I presumed. The Laurent family's lawyers were already moving to sever all ties with Nextech, and the stock was in freefall. Richard Hawthorne had resigned as CEO an hour after the hearing adjourned. My phone, the private one, buzzed. It was my mother. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. I braced myself and answered. Evelyn. Her voice was crisp, devoid of the hysterics another mother might have. Dr. Eleanor Reed, chair of linguistics at Columbia, dealt in facts, not emotions. I've been watching the news. It seems you've been busy. Mom. It's a long story. I'm sure it is, she said. The question is, what is your endgame? You've exposed the fraud. You've humiliated the man. The media has turned you into a symbol. What now? Her typical, cutting pragmatism was, for once, a relief. I don't know, I admitted, the truth of it startling me. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Your entire career, Evelyn, has been based on thinking ahead, on analyzing patterns and predicting outcomes. You've spent the last few weeks reacting. It's time to be proactive again. She paused, and her tone softened a fraction. Your father would have been proud of your courage, but he would also tell you to have an exit strategy. Revenge is not a strategy. It's an emotion, and it will burn out. Tears I didn't know I was holding back pricked my eyes. She was right. This had started as a reactive strike, a raw, emotional response to betrayal. But now I was at the center of a media firestorm and a shadowy corporate war. I needed a plan. I know. I whispered. Good. Then make one. And with that, she hung up. A typical Reed family heart-to-heart. I found Chloe in the kitchen, pouring 3 glasses of very expensive scotch that had appeared courtesy of Marcus Thorne. To putting a bastard behind bars, she said, handing one to me. I took the glass, but didn't drink. Chloe, what happens now? To me? My consulting business is toast. My name is synonymous with scandal, not scandal. She corrected. Integrity. A very marketable commodity if you play it right. But you're right. You can't go back to what you were. She leaned against the counter. You have options. The book deal offers are already flooding my inbox. The speaking circuits would pay a fortune. Or there's Marcus's offer. Head of Global Comms at Veritas. A real job. Power. Protection. Protection from Silas Vance? I asked, especially from him. A new voice said. Marcus Thorne stood in the doorway to the living room. David Chin must have let him in. He looked as impeccably calm as ever, but there was a new intensity in his eyes. He'd been watching his rival company implode, and he was the one holding the biggest piece of the wreckage. Sophie, he said with a slight nod as she came in from the balcony. Her own conversation finished. She looked wary but nodded back. Marcus, I said, I suppose we owe you a thank you. For the security. For all of it. You don't owe me anything. He said, stepping fully into the room. But I'm here to talk about your future. Both of your futures. He looked from me to Sophie. Nextech is finished. Veritas will acquire its viable assets for pennies on the dollar. The Laurent Pharmaceuticals deal is, of course, Void. But Jean-Claude Laurent is a pragmatic man. He still needs a stateside partner. Sophie's eyes widened. My father! He would never partner with the company that exposed his shame, exposed his salvation. You mean? Marcus countered smoothly. Veritas exposed the rot before your family's company was permanently tainted by it. That's the narrative. And narratives are my specialty. He turned his gaze back to me, which is where you come in. Evelyn, the offer stands, but it's expanded. I want you to lead the communication strategy for the new Veritas Laurent Alliance. It would be the comeback story of the decade. And I want Sophie, with her expertise in European culture and her name, to head a new cultural liaison division, turning a corporate disaster into a symbol of international cooperation and ethical business. It was a breathtakingly audacious pitch. He wasn't just offering me a job, he was offering us both a redemption arc that he would profit from immensely. He was rebuilding the very deal Liam had corrupted, but with himself at the center. Sophie and I looked at each other. I could see the same conflict in her eyes that I felt. It was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild something from the wreckage. But it also meant tying our futures irrevocably to Marcus Thorne. We would be living in the fortress he built. It's a very generous offer. Marcus, I said carefully, we need some time to discuss it. Of course, he said, though I could tell he disliked hesitation. But don't take too long. The news cycle is fickle. Right now, you're heroines. In a week, you'll be old news. The opportunity vanishes. He placed his business card on the counter next to the scotch. My personal number. Let me know. After he left, the three of us, Sophie, Chloe, and I sat in silence. It is a good opportunity, Sophie said quietly. A real position, not just hiding. It is. Chloe agreed. But he's not doing it out of the goodness of his heart. He's leveraging your story for his own gain. You need to decide if you're comfortable with that. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a news alert. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. Breaking. Liam Donovan, found unconscious in cell. Suspected overdose. Condition critical. I showed the screen to the others. Chloe gasped. Sophie made the sign of the cross. Oh my God, Chloe whispered. An overdose? In a federal holding cell? That's not possible. The security. A new call came in. From a blocked number. I answered, my hand trembling. A familiar, calm, chilling voice spoke. Silas Vance. A tragedy. Ms. Reed. It seems the pressure was too much for the poor boy. Such a waste. It wasn't an overdose. It was a message. Liam had been silenced. Permanently. Vance continued, his voice a soft, deadly whisper. I do hope this concludes the matter. Some stories are better left unfinished. Don't you agree? For the sake of everyone's health. The line went dead. I looked at Sophie and Chloe, their faces pale with horror. The victory of the courtroom was gone, replaced by a cold, stark fear. Liam was gone, the convenient fall guy, and the man in the shadows had just reminded us that he was still there. Watching, he had promised the story was over. But as I looked from Sophie's determined face to Chloe's furious one, I knew it wasn't. It couldn't be. The hollow feeling inside me was gone, replaced by a new, cold purpose. Revenge had been an emotion. This was now a mission. Marcus Thorne's offer of a fortress suddenly seemed a lot more appealing. But a fortress could also be a cage. I picked up his business card. The game had changed again. We were no longer just picking up the pieces. We were going to war. 3 months later, Paris felt like a different planet. The sharp edges of New York, the constant hum of threat, had been replaced by the soft, gray light of a Seine-side morning. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, a cup of strong coffee in my hand. It was a far cry from my West Village place. All Haussmann-era elegance and sprawling rooms. A fortress, yes, but one with a breathtaking view. The official story was that I was in Paris to establish Veritas Tech's new European headquarters and to foster the groundbreaking ethical partnership with Laurent Pharmaceuticals. The press release, which I had drafted myself, was a masterpiece of spin. It mentioned a period of challenges that had led to a renewed commitment to transparency, skillfully avoiding the names Liam Donovan or Silas Vance. I was the prodigal daughter returned, the savvy American executive bridging continents. Sophie was my counterpart, the elegant face of the Laurent family's renewed legacy. The doorbell rang. It was Sophie herself, her cheeks flushed from the spring chill. She bustled in, dropping a bag of fresh croissants on the kitchen counter. "Did you see it?" she asked, her eyes alight with a fire I hadn't seen before. "The morning briefs?" The Veritas stock price jumped another 5% on the European Open. "My father is surprisingly pleased." "I saw," I said, smiling. The plan was working, better than we had dared to hope. In the wreckage of Nextech, Marcus had been a vulture, but a brilliantly strategic one. The Veritas-Laurent alliance was the feel-good story that Wall Street and the Parisian business elite had desperately needed. My phone buzzed on the counter. "Marcus." I put it on speaker. "Marcus." "Sophie's here with me." "Evelyn." "Sophie." His voice was all business, but there was an undercurrent of satisfaction. "The numbers are better than projected. Jean-Claude is a happy man, which makes my life easier. You've both done exceptional work. We've laid the groundwork." I said cautiously. "The narrative is set." "It is." He agreed. "And now we need to talk about the next chapter." Silas Vance. The name landed in the sunny kitchen like a block of ice. The official investigation into Liam's overdose had gone nowhere. It was a closed case, but for us, it was an open wound. "What about him?" Sophie asked, her voice tight. "My sources indicate he's gone to ground, probably in Dubai or Moscow. But he's not the problem anymore. The problem is the people he works for, the ones who wanted the Nextech deal to go through quietly, the ones Liam was stealing for. They've lost a significant amount of money and a great deal of face. They see the Veritas-Laurent partnership not as a recovery, but as an insult." A chill ran down my spine. "Are we in danger?" "You're protected," Marcus said, and it was a statement of fact, not a reassurance. "The security around both of you is absolute. But we can't be reactive. We need to be proactive. We need to make the story we've created so powerful, so unassailable, that any move against you would be catastrophic for them. That is your new task, not just PR, armor." He was right. The courtroom victory had been just a battle. The war was a perpetual, silent one of influence and perception. "Understood," I said. "Good. I'll be in Paris next month. We'll discuss then." He paused. "You made the right choice, Evelyn. Both of you." After he hung up, Sophie and I sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the unspoken future settling over us. "He still wants to own the story," Sophie said finally, crumbling a piece of croissant. "I know," I replied, "but we're writing it." "Sophie, that's the difference. We're using his resources to build our own platform, our own power." It was the compromise we had made. We had accepted Marcus's offer, but on our terms. My title was head of global strategy, but my mandate was broad, giving me control over the narrative. Sophie's role was deliberately vague, allowing her to blend her family's connections with her own academic interests. We were playing the long game, from within the belly of the beast. Later that afternoon, I had a meeting with Antoine Duval, the investigator. We met at a quiet cafe tucked away on a side street. He looked the same, a little more worn around the edges. "Ms. Reed," he said, sliding into the booth opposite me. "Or should I say, Madame la Directrice? Evelyn is fine. Antoine, do you have anything new?" He shook his head, lighting a Gauloise. The waiter scowled but said nothing. "On Vance?" "Nothing solid. He is a ghost, but there are whispers. The people he worked for, they are not happy. They consider the Donovan affair messy. Amateurish disaster. They have cut ties. Vance is on his own now. A wounded animal is often the most dangerous kind, but a predictable one." I said, "Thank you, Antoine. Keep listening." As I stood to leave, he looked up at me, his gaze sharp. "You have changed, Evelyn. New York hardened you. It taught me the language." I corrected him. Now I'm just learning to speak it more fluently. I walked back along the Seine, the setting sun painting the river in hues of gold and orange. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. The hawk has landed. Missed you at the funeral. Until we meet again. S. Silas Vance. He was still out there, taunting me, letting me know he was watching. The fear was instant, a cold spike in my gut, but it was quickly followed by a surge of cold anger. He wasn't a ghost. He was a man who had made the mistake of thinking I was just a victim. I didn't delete the text. I saved it. I would show it to Marcus. I would add it to the file. It was another piece of data, another variable in the equation. I reached the Pont des Arts, the bridge laden with love locks. I stopped, leaning on the railing, looking toward the Louvre. This city had been the backdrop to Liam's lies. Now, it was the stage for my second act. My phone rang again. This time, it was Chloe, her face filling the screen. Hey, you. How's the City of Light treating its newest corporate superstar? I'm surviving. I laughed, the sound feeling strange and wonderful. How are things stateside? Quiet, boring, even. I'm thinking of opening a Paris office. You know, to keep an eye on my most high-maintenance client. Please do, I said, and I meant it. I could use a familiar face. We talked for a while. The easy, comfortable talk of old friends. It was a tether to the person I was before, a reminder that not everything had been burned away. As dusk settled, I finally headed home. At the door to my building, a familiar, solid figure nodded to me. David Chin. Marcus had insisted he remain as my head of security. I used to chafe under the constant presence. Now, I found it grounding. Evening. Ms. Reed. David. Anything to report? All quiet, he said. But quiet isn't always good. I know, I said, but it's a start. Upstairs, in the silence of my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and walked back out onto the balcony. The city was alight now, a sprawling tapestry of life and history. The ghost of Liam was here, and the shadow of Vance loomed. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of purpose that was entirely my own. I wasn't Evelyn, the victim. I wasn't Evelyn, the whistleblower. I was Evelyn, the architect. The game wasn't over. It would never be over. But I was no longer a piece on the board. I was a player, and I was just getting started. I took a sip of wine, looking out at the lights of Paris, and allowed myself a small, hard smile. Let them come. 5 years later, the auditorium of the World Economic Forum in Davos was packed. A sea of the world's most powerful people in sharp black and white. The air hummed with a low, serious energy. On the massive screen behind the stage, the title of the keynote address glowed. The Integrity Dividend. Why ethical transparency is the new competitive advantage. I stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone. At 35, the sharp edges of the young woman who had been betrayed at a Christmas party had been softened by time and authority. I wore a simple, powerful